A new patch with a wipe means that Star Citizen brings with it a need for many players to start earning their way in the verse again, and that holds true for this pilot too. Regular viewers here will know that the preferred style on this channel is to take it easy and err on the side of industrial gameplay, so what better way to build some reserves than to take out the Vulture to do some panel salvage. I'm Forrester, and this gameplay video showcases some Vulture panel salvage gameplay, sticking to the relative safety of Stanton for this one. To keep the overall length of the video down, some of the footage, such as quantum hops, have been sped up, and those parts are clearly marked as such, but otherwise this video is a full session end to end. And this is intended to be a gameplay video rather than a guide, although there is a fairly recent salvage tutorial available on the channel if that's what you were hoping for. So, without further ado, let's get started. And we'll immediately start with some sped up footage of getting on board the Vulture and heading out. In this case, we're at one of the Lagrange points and we're heading to Microtech. One of the features of the 4.0 patch is the removal of what you could previously do, which was to quantum to the Stanton star, and so you need to understand the exact distances between different quantum marks to end up in the Aaron Halo belt. Thankfully, such distances are dutifully recorded in many places online with a simple Google search. In this case, heading to Microtech from Lagrange point, it was 26.3 gigameters, and so here we are arriving in the Aaron Halo. One of the things that I like to do in each of my ships in the 4.0 patch is just toggle to the heads-up display part of the MFD and enable the advanced heads-up display. Just gives you a little bit more information to go off of. And then it's a case of scanning to try and find some panels. This hasn't really changed much at all with the advent of 4.0, still the same process. Do some scanning, look for the size of the signature, and look for something readily divisible by 2000, which denotes some salvage panels. And in this case, we've found one with 8000 signature. That's definitely a set of 4 panels. So this is a completely stock Vulture, I'm afraid. This is purely pulled straight out of the hangar. There's no upgrades, not even the wonderful icebreak skin. So this is a very, very basic experience. Obviously, as I build up my way in the verse, I will be upgrading the Vulture. And the key first upgrade for me is going to be having a second abrade scraper module. That's my preferred loadout for the Vulture, is dual abrade. In this case, the Vulture does come equipped with a single abrade module, and so by disabling the tractor beam, by just using the right scraper head, I think it's Alt and D on the keyboard, just using that abrade scraper module for salvaging. And the actual art of salvage has not changed much from patch to patch. It still feels a lot like, I think I've seen it described online as Power Wash Simulator, but for me it's quite a relaxing gameplay loop. Some of you will notice I'm not using the gimbal heads on the salvage heads. That's because actually I find it more relaxing to be using just my stick and rudder pedals to move the ship around. It feels a little bit less intensive for me than crouching over a mouse to do it, so I can do this in quite a relaxed fashion, just one hand and my feet. In the case of these salvage panels, the name of the game is much the same. It is focusing really on RMC, which is the more valuable of the crates that the Vulture can salvage, the other being construction materials, which is less valuable but easier to come by. The advantage of having just RMC is that the hopper doesn't get mixed up with different types of material, which means that you're always able to more fully empty out the hopper when you need to. Some of you may also be wondering why salvage in Stanton and not be in the new cool area of Pyro. Well, A couple of reasons. So first of all is simple performance. It seems to be with the new kind of server mesh 4.0 performance, your actual in-game performance depends on a number of factors, and one of those seems to be how many people are nearby. Well, in the Aaron Halo part of Stanton there are very, very few people nearby, so I notice a significant lag increase when approaching a station or a city, whereas out here the server responds very, very well. So that would be the first reason. The second reason is Pirate's quite dangerous right now. The advantage of doing this in Stanton is that the likelihood of coming across another player in exactly this part of the Aaron Halo asteroid belt is very, very low, whereas in Pyro things are a little bit more heated, especially where the salvage contracts are, and so the chance of running into another player is higher. Running into another player for a PvP encounter when you are in a Vulture or a cargo ship, no matter what you might read on Reddit or Spectrum, is not a good experience for the person in the salvage or cargo ship. So I would much rather avoid other players while I'm flying my Vulture. So that's why just doing a little bit of salvage in Stanton. Of course, the other aim is to start building up a little bit of funds so I can do some upgrades to the Vulture, get that second abrade, and really start raking in the cash. So that's why we've chosen Stanton for this. Plus there's something quite nice about having some relaxing music on and slowly scraping away the hull in relative safety. So with the Vulture, I'm really trying to fill up about 36 SCUs of RMC with the different panels. 36 is my magic number. It's 12 SCUs on the first one, which go on the grid and in the corridor. About 11 SCUs on the second one, which fills up the grid, fills up the corridor, and makes a little space by the hopper. And then 13 SCUs in the hopper, which can be emptied out when arriving at destination. So for me, 36 SCUs is about right. That's about 300, 400k, depending on where you sell it and the value you get. I usually expect to get about 300k for that, which is pretty good. And with upgrades, that can be anywhere between an hour and an hour and a half. So it's not the most profitable gameplay loop, but it's also not terrible. And as with anything in Star Citizen, part of the battle is finding something that you're motivated to do in order to earn your keep. And for me, salvage is one of those things that I can just kind of do and switch off. So I quite enjoy this as a money-making loop. Obviously back up to times 12 speed is getting the last of the panels in this little group of panels before moving on to find the next set. And then here is that next set. So this is a 10,000, so it's a set of 5 panels, and using that tractor beam just to spin things around, sometimes that's a bit easier than flying around the target. So that's what I've opted for in this case, making use of it while it's equipped, I suppose. And I tell you what, it does look very quick and efficient when you're in times 12 speed, getting 2 of these panels together, ready to salvage them up. So I appreciate this kind of gameplay isn't going to be for everybody, and it's not going to be for everybody all of the time either. You know, I'm certainly not one to shy away from a little bit of PvE combat from time to time, but that's obviously a lot more adrenaline fueled than this kind of relaxing panel salvage. So I quite like this industrial gameplay either first thing on a morning or last thing at night. It's a nice way to play the game, enjoy the game without being too intensive, and there's definitely a place for that. Not everything always has to be adrenaline filled all the time, at least not in my book. So there we have it, the first 12 SCUs of RMC. The Vulture hopper can take up to 13, but because I usually do 12 and then 11 and then 13, I'm not particularly concerned about having to load all the way up to 13 before unloading the first set of crates. If the actual salvage itself is Power Wash Simulator, this is Tetris, moving around boxes in the back of the Vulture. I have seen players get high 30 SCUs of boxes in the back. For me, my preferred method is loading up 23 different individual crates and then 13 in the hopper for a total of 36. As you can see, my method is broadly going from back to front, loading on the grid and then filling the corridor, then loading on the grid and then filling the corridor. When undertaking this panel salvage, it's really important to bring a multi-tool along. Whilst the Vulture has got a simple crafting station that is able to craft these things, invariably it always seems to want construction materials in order to do it and not just RMC, and obviously having that in the hopper starts to pollute the hopper with other stuff, which means you can carry less. So for example, if you had 0.9 SCUs of construction materials, the most you would ever get in RMC would be 12.1, which is just not a neat number, so having just RMC in there keeps things nice and simple. After all, it is the most valuable box size. Things are slightly different in the Reclaimer, which has a much larger hopper size and also a much larger cargo bay, so you could more easily take materials of different types. And equally, if you were pairing up a Vulture with something to extend its staying power, such as a video I did just before the winter break on the channel, where I used a Polaris to ferry the Vulture around, you could conceivably mix things a lot more effectively by doing that, because you've got the extra cargo storage space. But for a lot of these type of sorties, outings, whatever you want to call them, the limiting factor tends to be the actual storage capacity of the Vulture itself. As you can see, we're already pretty much half full of physical space on the back, and we've just done one hopper's worth. So anything that extends that capacity, like a cargo ship with your friend, or maybe even some larger ship like an 890 Jumper or Polaris, would certainly help. Now these are my favourite panels, these large panels. They're very smooth feeling to get all the salvage from, and they have the largest amount of RMC attached. I think regularly getting over 6 SCUs of RMC from one of these larger panels. It's pretty nice. So I'm always on the lookout for these panels. I'll salvage these as a priority if I've got a big group of panels. Yeah, gone from a nearly empty hopper to nearly 9 SCUs in the hopper just from that large panel, so you can see why they're the ones to have. The smaller panels are fine too, but I do like those larger panels. And clearly this is all much faster. You can see in the bottom left it's sped up to ×12 speed, which is significantly quicker than doing it in ×1 speed, but it's pretty relaxing. If you're the sort of person that enjoys this kind of gameplay, it's a pretty good way to do things. So here back down in the bottom deck of the Vulture, just loading things up again. As you can see, my preference to keep all the boxes facing the same direction starting to show, but there we go, another 11 SCUs of crates. So now it's just a case of finding one more group of panels to fill up the hopper, and then I'll have the 36 SCUs that I want before selling up. And thankfully this is a particularly dense part of the belt, and so been able to find panels fairly quickly here. And here we are back down to ×1 speed to enjoy a little bit of panel salvage once again. As you can see in ×1 speed, I'm really hampered here by just having the single braid. It feels to me a lot faster using 2, but obviously I haven't yet had the chance to have that equipped. But even so, just the gentle, smooth power wash simulator, whatever you want to call it, of kind of making my way through the panels, pretty relaxing for me. So the Vulture is one of the ships that I do keep in my hangar for this kind of situation where there's been a wipe and you want to earn some credits back, usually I'm not a big fan of the Drake ships, with maybe the exception of the Vulture, maybe the Corsair, maybe the Cutter. But actually the Vulture for me is a perfect ship for this kind of thing of earning some funds back. They are fairly cheap to buy in game at 2.6, 2.7 million alpha UC, but clearly if you've just been in a wipe situation, you'd need a way to earn some of those funds back to be able to pick one up. So actually for me, the convenience of having one in the hangar is a real plus. I do like having this Vulture, and it's probably one of my more widely used ships because it is such a nice money maker, albeit it doesn't have the same size of salvage beam or the cargo hold that the Reclaimer has. Everything that you need to do salvage wise is from a single seat, so you can be flying and salvaging from the front, and then all that you have to get out of the seat to do is to move the boxes, versus the Reclaimer when you're moving potentially between the pilot seat and the turret operator seats, the claw operator, and then going all the way to the back of the ship to move boxes. It's not as optimal a solo experience in the Reclaimer. Still lots of advantages in situations where you might use the Reclaimer, but if you're looking for comfort and convenience, I think the Vulture offers that gameplay in a more comfortable and convenient way for a single player. You might disagree though. You can let me know in the video comments if you love playing solo in the Reclaimer. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that fall in that camp. So speed things up a little bit now to ×12 speed just to finish off with this salvage panel. And then it's really just a case at this point of just filling up the hopper. I've got as much as I'm wanting to get out of the hopper and onto the back cargo deck. As I say, I'm not the person who tries to fill up as many boxes as is physically possible. I usually am pretty happy with 23 crates in the back. So I'm just filling up to get the last 13. Then I know I've got 36. It's a nice round number in my mind, so I'm very happy with that. Does seem much more relaxed at ×12 speed. As I say, that second abrade module will be an early upgrade for me. Nearly up to the 12 SCUs out of the 13 needed. And there it is full. So heading over to Microtech, which is my home location. I'll sell up there. I'll also be able to equip my Vulture livery, which I very much enjoy, the Icebreak livery. And there it is, the lovely planet of Microtech with the stock Vulture sat in front of it. I'm sure plenty of people have resettled to make their home in Pyro. For me, New Babbage is still my home. Absolutely love it here. And a quick look at the landing into the hangar hopefully gives a reflection as to why. Look at that, snow everywhere, nice trees, nice view across the ice lake. Yeah, Microtech definitely going to be my home for the foreseeable future. So heading in to land in the hangar, and my preferred method here, I always get given the extra large hangar, is I'll fly as close as I can so that the rear of the Vulture is near to one of the freight elevators, just to make things a little bit easier for loading, or in this case unloading, the cargo. Now this would be a great use case for an ATLS. Fortunately, because it's a new patch, I haven't had a chance to pick one up yet, so it's going to be unloading by hand using the multi-tool. But for 36 crates, that's not the worst, it's not too many to do, so I'm quite happy to do that. Don't know that I'd fancy completely unloading a Hull C or even a Hercules, but a Vulture, I can manage that. So hopping out of the side door, because obviously the back is full of crates, and then just moving all those crates one by one and stacking them up. There is something very satisfying about having a stack of crates that you've mined or salvaged yourself just sat there looking at you to say, this is what you've done this gameplay session. Especially if they're all facing the same direction. And there it is, my line of RMC from a successful salvage haul. Check that it's all on there okay, and it is. And that's it, 36 SEUs of RMC. So I'm going to send it down the freight elevator and head over to sell it up. So sometimes you can sell directly from the Vulture the things that are in the back. For the things on the grid it tends to work better than the things not on the grid, but because I have cargo in the hopper anyway, I need to unload all of that stuff to be able to unload the hopper, so I kind of figure, do you know what, I might as well just unload it all, send it down to my new Babbage storage and sell it all directly from there, and then I'm just selling from one place and I know it's properly unloaded. So select new Babbage, select my RMC, it's worth 306,000. I am quite happy with that. That's a little bump to my bank balance, and there we have it. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to let me know I should make more similar videos, and if you're not yet subscribed, given that you got this far, you might like to do that too, so that YouTube will know to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.